And I'm going to dive into all of those issues in some detail now. It's not every day that you get the Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem to actually take you through a guided tour of the Holy City and also discuss politics and what's causing the problems and where the solutions come from. But that's exactly what we did a few minutes ago with Flo Hassan, and let me just play that for you. This is what she told me about Jerusalem and about Israel. Well, let's now really try to understand Israel in great detail, also weaving history into it. And we have with us Flo Hassan. I was talking to you, you're the Deputy Mayor, of course, of Jerusalem, and it's an absolutely beautiful city, I have to tell you.
Thank you so much.
Now, you were talking to me, I was interviewing you on television a couple of weeks back.
That's right.
And you said, if you really want to understand Jerusalem, why don't you come here and see it?
And you came.
Here I am.
So welcome to the city.
Here I am. So now tell me all about it.
There's a lot to talk about. So welcome to the city of Jerusalem, our capital city. And it's a city that was created by King David 3,000 years ago. So it's a 3,000-year-old city, which has been conquered and reconquered, and the Jewish people have been in and out and thrown out and come back for 3,000 years. But the main reason why King David decided to create the capital of the Jewish kingdoms here in Jerusalem was because the land of Israel was divided into different tribes. The Jewish people used to be tribal people. Yeah. And then you have a very strong king, very smart politician, and he decides to unite the Jewish kingdoms. And he is the king of Judea. And the capital of Judea is Hebron, which is not here. But he understood that to unite the kingdoms, he needed to break neutral ground. And that was Jerusalem.
I'm so glad you were talking about the entire subject of uniting the tribes and uniting people, because
yes,
while we are looking at the history of Jerusalem, and it's great to be here, and who better than you to show me around, but let's talk a little bit about current politics as well.
Sure.
Israel is looking perhaps less united right now than it has in a very, very long period of time. Not just the Israeli-Palestinian issues that are continuing. Terror attacks are taking place. Another one took place yesterday. You're having vigilante attacks in revenge. And then, of course, you've got all the protests over judicial reforms. So is Israel seeming a very divided place right now? Is that an unfair way to put it?
Well, that's kind of a negative way to look at it. Okay. And I share in your concerns about what's going on at the moment. But let me just say, I mean, you know this, India is the largest democracy in the world. In big democracies, people disagree, right? Yeah. And so at the moment, what we're seeing is not division. What we're seeing is a living, breathing, arguing democracy, arguing about something very fundamental. What are the different arms of government? What is their role? How do you provide the right checks and balances? And so there are people who agree with the reforms, there are people who disagree with the reforms, but the protests are in large, peaceful protests, people who are having a real democratic argument, and that's something to celebrate.
Yeah, you're talking about the judicial reforms in particular.
The judicial reforms.
All the issues that are taking place with it.
Yes.
You said democracy, you said a living democracy. A lot of the people who are protesting on the streets, and I've just come from Tel Aviv where the protests are taking place.
Yes.
They are saying this is the opposite of democracy. This is an effort for the executive to take full control and take full charge. Is that a fair way to look at it?
Not in my opinion, because what you're looking at...
That's not what's happening. The executive is pretty much saying we should control the judiciary.
No, the executive is saying the judiciary should have at least one check. The judiciary in this country is completely unchecked. There is not one check. In regular countries, in regular democracies, the judiciary has one check, which is the government selects judges, and then the judiciary. And then the judiciary is independent.
In India, we've got an NJAC which selects judges, and it's been a controversial issue.
And what is the NJAC comprised of?
Judges.
So judges select other judges.
Essentially.
So
I know the executive is complaining about it in India as well. So
yeah.
It's not that.
So I think that's problematic, because what happens is that it ends up being a revolving door of the same people. And when you look at the judiciary right now in Israel, you look at the Supreme Court, you don't see a lot of minorities. You don't see ethnic diversity. And I think that's a problem. Now, I'm a lawyer. I believe that we need a strong, independent judiciary, but we need a judiciary where its role is defined. And in India, your judiciary, your Supreme Court does judicial review. Here, they get involved in administrative, governmental decisions. Why? Because they gave themselves that power. No law was passed defining the scope of their power. They defined the scope of their own power. And what this government is trying to do is restore the balance. It's not trying to get more power. It's trying to bring the judiciary to have the power that any normal judiciary in any democracy should have.
All right. I am going to go on to the rest of it as well. But just looking at the judicial reforms, I'm sure you've seen the polls. The public doesn't seem to like the judicial reforms. I mean, Likud, I know Likud has done it. You've got allies who are on the right side of politics. But if you're looking at the opinion polls, people are saying, we're not sure we like this.
Well, I think...
I'm sure you've seen the one opinion poll
of course.
If elections were held tomorrow, Likud would lose.
So I want to say a couple of things. First of all, I think that unfortunately and cynically, the politicians who lost this last election are politicizing these reforms because many of them were in favor of reforms until this happened and until they lost. I mean, it's, documented. The second thing I was going to say is that I like a very interesting quote of Shimon Peres, who used to be our president, and he said, polls are like perfume, smell but don't swallow. We have to be careful with polls.
There will be lots of elections in Israel, though, so you need to keep the polls somewhat in mind, right?
Absolutely, but we just got into government 2 months ago. Why are we polling right now? We're not going to go into another election, hopefully for 4 years.
The word hopefully was used.
Of course, we're a coalition.
Hopefully is a word, right? In coalition government.
It's always a word in this country, for everything.
All right, we've discussed the judicial reforms. I want to now shift my focus and perhaps we can go into the old city.
Absolutely.
I'd like to discuss the other questions.
Yes, security.
The fundamental questions that are still around the Palestinian issue and where security stands and what's happening with all of these attacks. But maybe I want to get you to show me around inside. And then
let's do it. So this is Jaffa Gate. Look, it's an L-shaped gate.
So first of all, I have to say, so this is a Jaffa Gate, right?
Jaffa Gate, 16th century Ottoman gate. And the reason it's L-shaped was to another kind of defense to the old city. And this gap is also part of Jaffa Gate. Today, it's one of the main tourist entrances to the old city.
Well, I have to say, I have to say thank you so much for doing this. Not everybody, I'm sure, who gets a deputy mayor of Jerusalem to actually give you a walking tour through the old city.
Well, first of all, it's my pleasure.
Yeah. But I want to come back to what I was saying to you when I was talking to your interview. And I did look at you and say, what about safety and what about security? And I have to say, I'm quite...
Do you feel unsafe?
No, but I'm also feeling, I'm certainly not feeling unsafe, but I'm almost surprised that you as the deputy mayor are walking around here. There's no security guard anywhere to be seen.
No.
I haven't actually going in and out of the hotels had any metal detectors.
No.
No one's really checked me.
Well,
why is that so? Because Israel had a reputation for really tight security. And I have to say it's probably a lot less than Delhi right now.
Really?
And Delhi hasn't had a terror attack in.
So I would say that the security here is, you don't see it, but it's around. Basically, the whole city is a network of cameras. Oh. So there is some place in City Hall where everybody's seeing what we're doing right now. They're not paying much attention because we're not doing anything suspicious. But there are eyes everywhere. We are one of the most...
So you're saying it's not in your... that's where the Israeli technology really comes in, right?
Exactly. But you will see soldiers and policemen further down in the market to ensure that everything is peaceful.
So there's no visible security at this present moment. I'm just trying to understand this again because I think that's an interesting lesson for us.
Yes. There's no visible security, but there are cameras everywhere.
And that means in many ways it's actually strange because having cameras everywhere should feel very intrusive. But
Not at all.
In many ways it's less than having security forces everywhere.
Absolutely. But you have some security guys over there, police.
Okay.
And so there is presence for people to feel safe and to be safe. Yeah. But normally these vendors just want people to buy. This is a tourism destination. This is the most visited tourist site in Israel.
Okay.
And the vendors want people to buy.
Okay.
By the way, I want to say one thing, which
Yeah,
is very, very...
yeah.
When there were no tourists, we took advantage and we put in place an accessibility plan. We are the most accessible, ancient, we're the most accessible ancient city in the world. All of this means that a person in a wheelchair can come and visit the old city, can go and visit the church, can go and visit the mosque.
Excuse me, come see my shop, what you have.
How are you?
It's a lovely place to come and shop.
It is, we'll shop. So this is accessibility, that's what it is.
All right, so let's move now from security to the politics of this, right?
Yes.
Of what exactly is happening. It's, for anybody looking at it from the outside, it seems that the positions that have been taken are continuing to be intractable. There's no easy solution in mind. Israel had a lot of sympathy from the entire world as to what was done originally, right? The way Israelis fought in the 1948 war, in 1967, beat all those neighbors, set up a fantastic, successful, technologically heavy country in the middle of the desert. All of that is the stuff of legend right now. But that David and Goliath story has been somewhat turned on its head in recent times.
Yes.
You're hearing about boycott movements and BDS and what have you, and Israel being very clearly positioned as the international bad guy in all of this.
Yeah.
How would you react to all of that?
I think it's extremely unfair. And I think that what people don't seem to understand is that the conflict in this country is not about the fact that there's no Palestinian state. The conflict in this country is about the fact that there's a Jewish state. Ideologically, the Palestinian leadership has never accepted our existence. How do I know that? They've been offered 4 times everything they said they wanted and still rejected those peace deals. And what did they return with? Violence and terrorism. So if you want a state, why don't you have a state already? They've had plenty of opportunities. And that's why the real reason that we're still in this situation is because the Palestinian leadership is lying to their people, telling them, one day we're going to kick them all out. One day the whole thing is going to be back. They do not talk to them about a peaceful resolution.
I'm sorry, I got distracted from by
the historical crossroads in here.
So if I just look at that, and let's just talk that through for a moment, what that one sign means. Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which is that way. That's where Christ was crucified. Western Wall, one of the most sacred spots for the Jews for thousands of years. And Temple Mount, Al-Haram Sharif, where the Prophet Muhammad ascended.
But what this poster is telling you something else, and that is that we sanctify freedom of worship in the city, mainly because it's under Israeli sovereignty. Before Israel took sovereignty, there was no way that you and I could have gone to the church or even the Western Wall.
Okay, so it's an interesting point that you're making, and I'm just going to digress a bit. We'll come back to the politics of it. But all of these religions out here in this one place, probably the only place on the planet which is like this, right?
Yes, but the only guarantee that everybody can go and worship according to their tradition is Israeli sovereignty, because before 1967, when this was an illegal Jordanian occupation from 48 to 67, Jews couldn't pray at the Western Wall, Christians couldn't pray in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. It was absolutely not allowed. And so we today actively facilitate freedom of worship.
All right, you are still going to, let me come back to trying to find a solution to this. I'm just trying to not finish.
The solution is very simple.
I don't want to find a solution in the
I'll tell you what the solution is.
So this is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
Yes. This is where Jesus is believed to be buried. In Hebrew, we call it the Church of the Tomb.
Yeah.
And there are people who believe that it was here or very nearby where Jesus was actually crucified. Other people believed that he was crucified a little bit further out, but was buried here.
I believe there's an old, I believe there's the old sort of a store, and you go behind that and you can see the mountain of Calvary as well.
That's what you can do inside. And the different Christian denominations also have taken different parts of the church, which is interesting.
So as you were just saying, we're about to go to the most holy spot for Muslims and for the Jews. It's one of the most holy spots for Christians.
This is
on the
it.
planet.
This is it. Exactly. And as you can see, everybody can come and worship freely. And we actively facilitate that and ensure that all our tourists feel at home in the city.
I'm finding it really interesting. So now suddenly all signs, all shops, it's Christian now.
Yes.
It's as if you've suddenly gone from, I don't know, Saudi Arabia to
Rome.
Rome. Yeah.
Well, here is Rome. So the beauty of Jerusalem is that it's got layers of history. So it's got Jewish history, Roman history, Babylonian history, just got Balmuk history, then back to Jewish, Ottoman, layers and layers and layers. And here we have one of the oldest layers, which is Roman paving stone, which is incredible.
So it actually dates back to Roman times.
Yes.
Okay.
This is paving. You have to be careful. Paving from Roman times.
So I still have to say, we're getting closer and closer to the Temple Mount, and we're getting closer and closer to the Western Wall. I'm still somewhat bemused at the lack of visible security. I know you said there are cameras. How do you do it? You try and go to the source of it? I mean, because it's not in your face.
Well,
I'm not seeing any checking or...
Ironically, the only metal detector we will pass is to go to the Western Wall. In other words, there is not a problem security-wise to go to a Christian site, even Temple Mount, but to go to the Jewish site in the Jewish capital, we have to have people go through metal detectors.
But how do you... So when you were saying you're detecting it at the source, what does that mean? Your intelligence is now good enough that you can... You will go and find the terrorists in a Nablus or wherever it is, or Germany, before they even come here. So you don't have to check
we've had 14 deaths in the last 3 weeks, so it doesn't always work. But our intelligence is good enough that we prevent 99% of the bad guys.
So Fleur, we are now right at the heart of Jerusalem, right? I can see that's the way to the Temple Mount and Al-Haram Sharif, and this is the Western Wall of
Absolutely.
Church. So we are right at the center of this. I'm just going to take you a little bit back in history. All of this fighting, all of this has really come for the possession of this like square kilometer around us right now. And it's not fresh, it's not after Israel. People have been fighting about this particular piece of land now for thousands of years.
Absolutely. But look what we have today. We have a thriving tourism destination with 4 quarters. The Muslim quarter, the Christian quarter, the Jewish quarter, and the Armenian quarter. When this was under Jordanian sovereignty, Jews could not go and pray at their holiest site. In fact, Jewish holiest site is Temple Mount. And as you were just told right now, only Muslims can go through this entrance. So we are maintaining the status quo. We're ensuring that the status quo pertains in this city. And so when people accuse us of somehow breaching that or disrespecting Haram al-Sharif, you've seen for yourself, Israeli soldiers protecting Haram al-Sharif.
All right, now, I get what you're saying out there, but if you look at the conditions, for example, you can say that whatever's happening in the Gaza Strip is not Israeli responsibility.
We left in 2005.
And I completely agree with you. You left it in 2005, Hamas took it over, and whatever's happening inside there has got nothing to do with Israel. But in the West Bank, what you would call Judea and Samaria, the issues that are pertaining inside that are very much Israeli responsibility to some extent?
Not really. 20 years ago, we signed the Oslo Accords with the Palestinian Authority. The Palestinian Authority was created and they have autonomy for Area A and mostly for Area B. Area A is where all their major cities are, and Area B is where all their major towns and villages are. They have sole responsibility for their own autonomy. We only go in there when there's a security threat to our country. When they don't do their job, we have to do that job to protect ourselves. But they have autonomy. They run their own government. healthcare. Now, if they're doing a bad job, is that also Israel's fault?
No, but if you're trying to find a solution going forward, as positions become more and more intractable, right now you're still dealing with the Palestinian Authority.
Yes.
You're still dealing with, Mohammed Abbas. Tomorrow something happens to him. You have Hamas taking over in the northern parts of the Western Bank. Then what happens? Islamic Jihad takes over. Then what happens? Then you've got a Gaza Strip type situation right next to... And remember, this is right next to Israeli
So how
cities.
is that convincing me that we need to give away land in order to have peace?
No,
you are actually got to the crux of the problem.
I'm not convincing you one way or the other. I'm just trying to understand what the situation is.
Yes.
Because some would say a solution, therefore, has to be... you have to try and find a solution.
Absolutely.
And
we've been trying to find a solution before the state was even born. We offered the Palestinians a two-state solution before 1948. In 1948, they said no. They started a war against us. All the Arab countries around Israel started a war against us to annihilate us. If they would have won, there would have been the second Jewish genocide in 10 years. They lost, thank God, it was a miracle. 1967, all the armies gathered up again to destroy us. This time they didn't destroy us, and this time we took land, historic Jewish land, back to protect ourselves. Right. And that is the situation that we have right now. And then in early 2000s, after 4 wars, we gave that land to their autonomy to prepare themselves for statehood. What did they do with that power? What have they done to build a better future for their people?
You're aware of BDS and this entire movement that
Absolutely.
is aware, saying sanction Israel.
But BDS is very clear about their motives. Their motives is not a peaceful resolution with Israel. The BDS's motives is the destruction of Israel. They say it very clearly. We should believe them when they say it.
But if you're trying to see the situation right now, I'm also just trying to figure out which way this goes, because how many people, for all the security measures that we were discussing inside there and all the intelligence that you have, how many people have died in terror attacks in the last 2 weeks?
In the last 2 weeks, 14 tragic deaths. And we prevent 97, 98% of everybody who set out to kill people.
And you also shoot down 97% of the rockets now that are being fired into Israel.
Absolutely.
But there are 200,000 rockets in Hezbollah-controlled land in southern Lebanon aimed at Israel. So that's what I'm trying to get my head around. Here you've got a really successful, high-tech, thriving, hub. But there are still these existential questions, and I'm not sure that...
I think we're the only country still facing these existential questions, which is ridiculous. You ask me what the solution is, Vikram, I'm going to tell you what the solution is. A Palestinian Mahatma Gandhi who puts down arms and says, we're both going to live here.
Okay, a Palestinian Mahatma Gandhi is one possibility. How about an Israeli Mahatma Gandhi?
Oh, we've had a few. We've had a few. And then on the other side, you had Yasser Arafat, who responded to a peace deal
but what seems to be
with a war.
But what seems to be happening, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, that even the Israeli side seems to be getting a little more entrenched hardline. Is that a fair way to put it, or no?
It's not that we're an entrenched hardline, it's that we're exhausted from trying to make peace. The people who openly say in their own language that they don't believe in a peaceful resolution, they believe that one day they'll be able to kick us all out. This is what's in the Palestinian school book. This is what's in the media. They're not talking. My kids come home and they're singing songs, one day we will be born to peace. You know what songs they're singing? One day we're going to kick all the Jews out.
So this is it. This is the Western Wall.
This is the Western Wall. What is the Western Wall? It's basically one of the outer walls of King Solomon's temple that was destroyed and rebuilt and then destroyed again. So the Jewish holiest site is actually not the wall. It's the Al-Aqsa compound. It's the Temple Mount. That is our most holiest site. And yet, we give up praying there in order to keep the peace and the status quo. And on top of that, we get accused for breaching that status quo when all we're doing is preserving it.
So right now, this is the place where the holiest place where Jews can go and pray, right?
Where we can go and pray, this is it.
All right. Let me just look at the future. No better place to do this. I mean, the Western Wall has been a symbol of hope, and has been, when Jews for all of
They call it the Wailing Wall because we used to cry by that wall.
Yeah.
And
but now if you look at the future, where are the signs of hope? When you're coming and praying here and saying what's going to happen, what are the signs of hope? Because you're saying peace is not going to be easy to find. Terrorism may exist for a long period of time. Where's the hope? Where's the peace coming from?
What I'm saying is that this is a conflict that could be resolved in a day with one simple switch, that the Palestinian leadership accepts that there is a Jewish state here. The minute they do, there'll be peace. That's it. Ideologically, they still haven't accepted that we're not going away. We're not going anywhere. So that's really the key to peace. We don't have that yet. So we manage.
Make the compromises that would be necessary for that, giving up some land.
4 times. 4 times we've offered it. 4 times. And 4 times we've been met with terrorism and war. After us offering them, the leadership, what they said they wanted.
So now, while violence is continuing and terrorists are continuing, and there's no clear peace in sight, and rockets are still being fired, and every day when I open the newspapers here in Israel, I'm seeing stories of attacks. On the other side, one thing which is happening is, and I know you've been very closely involved with that, the Abraham Accords.
Yes.
Opening up to UAE,
Yes.
opening up to Bahrain.
Yes.
Who knows, potentially opening up to Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
Are these really important developments?
It's game-changing. The Middle East has been realigned between the countries that want peace and prosperity and the countries that want radicalism and destruction. There is no longer an Arab-Israeli conflict. There are conflicts in the Middle East, but it's a realignment, and that's what's hopeful. So we've made peace with the UAE, with Bahrain, with Morocco, Sudan, Chad, the Muslim part of Africa. And by the way, India is very important in this whole mosaic.
I was just about to ask you, what role is India playing in this? Because I2, U2 has obviously been something that India has been involved with and helping with. And I know there's a very close relationship between Prime Minister Netanyahu and Prime Minister Modi. What's the role that India is playing?
I think for economic development, it's a crucial role. We can triangulate the relationship between Israel, India, and the Gulf. For mutual prosperity, I think that has a lot of promise. I think there are more countries that eventually will join the Abraham Accords. And again, these countries have to understand, which side are you on? The one of peace and prosperity or the one of conflict and destruction? And at some point, the Palestinians will choose to be on the side of peace and prosperity.
But you know, it's really fascinating to hear you saying all of this. And by the way, I'm not sure, having got the deputy mayor of Jerusalem to give us both the history of Israel, the history of conflict, the path in the future, and also a fantastic tour through all of Jerusalem. I think it's also time to let all of you know that we're actually married to an Indian. So yeah,
I am. We have a very strong connection to India ourselves. My husband's family are from Calcutta. They are actually an Iraqi Jewish family that 150, 200 years ago moved to Calcutta. And they established a very well-known bakery there in the New Market called Nahum's. We were just there for Christmas.
Okay.
And we're very close to India. We make Indian food at home. I have Indian furniture. I have saris and salwar shamizes. We're very connected culturally. And so I believe very much in the connection between India, the Gulf, Israel, and everybody else who wants to join.
So, as the Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem,
Thank you
so much.
Thank you for coming.
Beautiful city, and it's been such a pleasure. And I'm going to sit here and soak up history for a while.
Enjoy it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Such a pleasure.